Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Reach out to me. My email is tmosso@thewatchbox.com. The model you see here was made from 2012 through 2019. It is the scarcest principal version of the AP Royal Oak 15400. Now, there were several different dials. We had silver, we had black, we had blue, but it was the blue dial that was the scarcest, a special piece reserved for premier retailers as well as AP factory stores. It is one of the most sought Royal Oaks ever made, and I will say this. Right now, in stock, we have several 15202 jumbos. We have several 5402 A and B series jumbos. This is the only example that I have seen of a blue dial 15400 in the last year. They are hard to come by. They have a lot of presence too. At 41 millimeters in diameter, the watch is 9.7 millimeters thick. It's 51.5 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip, but if you include these little intermediate links, the so-called plots, the total distance across the wrist is 54.5 millimeters. Now I'll throw it on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, and I'm going to advise you to think of this as a 43 millimeter round watch, because it really does wear quite large. The timepiece is flat enough that it'll easily slide underneath the cuff, but it's the breadth of the watch across the wrist. I would recommend, honestly, a wrist of my size to wear it best, though you might be able to get away with an oval wrist that's 15 centimeters in circumference. I have no problem wearing it. This looks great. It fits great. But if your wrist is much smaller, you're going to want to look for a smaller case. But it is beautifully made. Everything is solid to the point that this feels almost as hefty as gold watches from some brands. The bezel, the case, the bracelet links, all intricately hand-finished. On a Royal Oak, no matter what movement is on the inside, the best finishing is on the outside, and it takes virtuosity, a steady hand, and years of experience. You can even see that the inner faces and the intermediate links have been polished. There's faceting down the flank, there's vertical satin finish on the side, there's longitudinal satin finish across the top. There's a wonderfully subtle series of steps that you can barely even feel with your finger. You can see the downward sweep, but you really can't feel the steps. The tolerances are that good. The bracelet's held to the case using screws and bars, and the individual links are retained against each other using screws. Remember, Patek Philippe today uses pin sleeves on its Nautilus and Aquanaut bracelets, so this is the right way to do it. You can see that it is a double folding clasp, a sequential close with one side closing before the other. Internally, it's media blasted and it is satinated, and this is really a very well-made clasp. It feels rugged enough to be used on a sports watch like an offshore, which is why it's great to see it on a 15400, because you know you have security. Screws and bars to hold a bracelet to a case. Again, the more expensive way to make things. The easy way to do this would be spring bars, but AP continues to do things the right way on that front. The flanks of the bezel continue perfectly aligned through the case back. The bezel is a rounded octagon. The original Royal Oak in 1972 was designed by Gerald Genta, who drew his inspiration from a vintage diving helmet. So that's where that shape comes from. You can see there's a little satin finished outer flank, a rounded polished outer edge, and then we have vertical satin finish across the top. The bolts, and they are bolts, not screws, are arranged in a directional pattern, and they're made of white gold. And you can see that white gold is a little bit darker and a little bit warmer against the silver of the steel bezel. We have a hexagonal crown that matches the hexagonal bolts. It is a screw down. The watch is 50 meters water resistant, and I always say 50 meters with a screw down crown is enough for surface swimming, so you can definitely take this swimming. The dial features plenty of luminescence. You'll find no shortage of it here. It is a sports watch after all. And then we have the Grande Tapisserie, which is the large hobnail. The petite is what you find on a jumbo. Mega is what you find on an offshore. Well, the mega is stamped, but the Grand and the petite, they are easily identifiable as pantograph cut, because you can see the tiny little textures that run between and over the hobnails. There are over 20,000 little marks on this dial. The pantograph lathe is a mimicry engine that takes a big template and then copies it onto a brass blank that becomes this dial. It's an artisanal 19th century kind of engine that requires a delicate setup, and then after the pantograph cut, the dial is galvanized blue. and the blue has historically had the highest rejection rate of all of the dials used on the Royal Oaks, which is why historically it was always reserved for the best retailers, and probably one reason why I see so few blue dial 15400s. Now, one change with the 15400 from the previous 39-15300 was that the date disc now had the same color as the dial, which is much appreciated. We have white gold hands, indices, and logos, so over time they will not tarnish, oxidize, or change color. On the reverse side, we have a display case back and AP's manufactured caliber 3120. You can see the rotor, which is 22 karat gold, features the coats of arms of the Audemars and Piguet families, reminding you that AP is the oldest Swiss watchmaker, continuously owned and run by founding families. The watch has a 60-hour power reserve. It beats away at 21,600 vibrations per hour. It has a quick set date and a hacking seconds function. And you can see we have this large and distinctive batwing-like full balance bridge for better shock tolerance. We also have a free-sprung balance with a Gyromax-style balance architecture for precise adjustment and shock resistance. The rotor is a bidirectional winder for smoothness, and it uses unlubricated ceramic bearings. And you can see all of this pivots on 40 jewels. It is a gorgeous little movement made by AP, and it's a judicious blend of hand and machine decoration appropriate to the price. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for pricing.